you keep looking through that and see other points that you want to point out here.
Okay.
I'm going to bring Jonathan McLatchie on the line. Jonathan from England. London, England. No, actually, he's not from London, but he's from Newcastle.
Don't insult him.
That's true. Jonathan, you know I lived in Rushden for 9.5 years.
I didn't know that.
I don't know if you know where Rushden is.
I'm not actually familiar.
It's just outside of Bedford.
Okay.
Northampton.
Very exciting stuff, Phil.
I know. Everyone's excited. They're like, what? He did?
And that's the end of it.
The
Oh, you did? Cool.
The interesting part of that, actually, is that when I moved here in fourth grade, you're made fun of for everything. And so one of the first things that I did was make the accent disappear. So now to this day, when I talk to my mom, I have the British accent. And when I talk to everybody else, I don't.
Even to Jonathan, you don't even go into the...
I know. It's weird, right?
Yeah.
I bet if I was to go back to England for a little bit, it would, like, kick in. I'd get weird stares from my American friends.
What are we going to talk to Jonathan about? I don't want to hear about this anymore.
Well, you're supposed to
Enough
finish
already.
the article.
Oh. I don't know. Ricky Gervais is just kind of dumb. I mean, I think he really misunderstands Christianity, the law, and what's purpose is, and the ideas of actually the depth of the law, and how much we actually do break it constantly all the time.
Yeah.
So...
Or rules that we're supposed to follow, and then as a result of that, we're somehow good Christians. And that's really his entire argument in that article. Jonathan, we're talking about a Ricky Gervais article from a few years ago talking about Easter. He points out many different things, and essentially his whole preface is that he is a better Christian than most Christians out there, and he goes through the Ten Commandments and talks about how he hasn't broken
Any of them.
any
Oh, wow.
Any of the Ten Commandments. So he even says, you shall not bear false witness to your neighbor. Nope, tick. He said he's never bore false witness to his neighbor. So he's never lied to anybody?
He's never taken the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah, like he
but
said no.
But his position is there is no God, so therefore I can't take his name in vain.
Okay.
Ding ding.
You shall not steal. Nope, tick. You shall not commit adultery. That's the kicker. He says nope, tick. So if you even, like Jesus said, if you even think about it, you've already committed adultery. So already he's misunderstanding the point of Christianity and the law. So there's really not much more I want to say about it. It's just kind of ridiculous.
Thousands of Christians gathered in Memphis, Tennessee this past weekend as a result and response to an atheist convention in Memphis. The New Jersey-based group American Atheists held a 4-day national convention. April
4 days? What are they talking about?
I don't know.
I don't think they have anything to talk about.
I don't know. Well, we're going to talk to Jonathan about what is it that they're talking about, because I have no idea.
For 4 days.
For 4 days.
Oh my gosh.
4 days. So, interestingly, they were able to get a lot of individuals.
I bet Richard Carrier was there. Talking about how...
I don't see that. But these are some of the things that they did. Speakers at the event included a New York-based Satanic Temple and Muslim critic.
All right.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali. I don't know. A showing of the film God's Not Dead.
They actually watch that?
With live mockery.
Oh.
From comedians Trace Bulau and I don't know who these people are. Frank Conniff. Atheist activist training. And a number of workshops.
Is there counseling sessions too?
No.
Oh my gosh.
So interestingly enough, 4,000 Christians gathered at the same time that this was going on. in order to worship, in order to pray, and there was a lot of other messages as well as a result of that. So, interestingly enough, I wanted to talk to Jonathan about this, get kind of your ideas. I mean, this is the thing. So this is the type of stuff that's going on out there, and when I read that 4,000 Christians met, very close by, and they prayed and they worshipped and they had some Christian messages and whatever else, I kind of felt like maybe we weren't doing everything that we possibly could, and or if that was even the right response to the particular convention that was going on. And so with that said, I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit as to what is the best Christian response, or at least what is your Christian response as a Christian to the atheist. I mean, of course, you've got the large gathering here, which is much different than your normal friend or your family or your neighbor. But regardless, I think for the most part, it's still the same principle. It's still the same idea. And it seems to me that in this particular situation, we're not engaging, and instead almost seems like maybe we're retreating a little bit. So enough of me. Jonathan, thanks for joining us. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Well, in the case of atheist conferences, I mean, I myself make a habit of, when I have opportunity, to attend atheist conferences and engage with atheists in a cordial and respectful dialogue based upon reason, argumentation, evidence, and so forth. I think that's the best way to engage, and I think it's important that we take opportunities like this to educate ourselves about the argumentation that's being offered by the neo-atheist community. So I would support attending these conferences, not simply for the sake of ripping their arguments to shreds, but actually being educated yourself about where they're coming from, try to understand their backgrounds and the challenges that they have faced. I know people within the neo-atheist community, for example, who were mistreated, I think, by their families when they came out as atheists, and I think we need to be sensitive to that, and we need to always approach these situations in a spirit of love and compassion rather than in a spirit of judgment. And I think if you're going to if a Christian if a Christian group is going to be gathering outside an atheist convention like this, I think it needs to be done with the right spirit. So that's, I think, what I'd say on that.
Yeah. Do you think that 4 days is quite a long time for an atheist conference?
Yeah, it does seem like it, but there are Christian conferences that go on for that length of time as well. So.
Well, and I realize that it's just as Anthony pointed out earlier, what are they talking about? Now, you've actually been to this same similar type of an event. I mean, what type of stuff do they cover at this type of a thing? I mean, we talked about some of the different things that they supposedly went through. I guess to gather a ton of atheists in Memphis, of all places, I don't know how many people would actually show up. But regardless of that, sure. What types of workshops are they having? I mean, what types of topics are they discussing? Of course, you go to a Christian conference, you've got a wide gamut of different things.
Sure. Well, they'll have people like Richard Carrier and David Fitzgerald and others who will give talks on why they think Jesus didn't exist, and they'll have people talk about perhaps cosmology or physics or evolution. They'll have someone like P.Z. Myers or Jerry Coyne or someone bash creationism, and they'll basically associate every Christian who is skeptical of the efficacy of the neo-Darwinian mechanism. They'll brand them as a creationist, and basically group everyone together as if you've got this monolithic view that basically is the same thing as young Earth creationism, which is simply not a fair branding.
Well, they don't understand the nuances even within the positions.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I think that we need to be fair, too, in the way that we approach our critiques of... Because sure. I'm finding more and more Christians that just kind of make blanket general statements about atheists. And I just want to say, we can't just do that. We have to be fair to them, and we have to understand that every position has very different nuances to it. So,
sure. I've I've long said that if you want to critique a position that you disagree with, you should strive to understand that position better than the best defenders of that position.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're on the public square critiquing neo-Darwinian evolutionary theory, you should strive to understand that better than the best defenders of that viewpoint. And I don't see that principle reciprocated by the neo-atheist community typically.
No, I don't. The only guy I've ever really, I mean, Stephen Meyer is one of the guys that I highly respect because of the way he does that very same thing, where he understands the position better than most defenders do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should strive to be more like him.
And we should be getting our information. So if you study, if you're critiquing evolutionary theory, you should be getting most of your information on that paradigm from the literature that's written by those who subscribe to it. Whereas I find that most of the neo-atheists get most of their information on intelligent design and also, quote-unquote, creationism from the NCSC or people like P.Z. Myers or Jerry Coyne or someone like that, and they're not necessarily a very fair representative of those respective viewpoints.
I was going to ask you, so when you go to these conferences, these atheist conferences, do you just go up to like different booths and start engaging, or you just start talking to just random people that you are seated by? How do you go about engaging people at these conferences?
Well, typically, I've been to more skeptic conferences than atheist conferences. I haven't really been to very many atheist ones. Skeptic ones I've been to, which is essentially most people who attend skeptic conferences would tend to be atheists. I used to be a regular at Skeptics in the pub when I lived in Glasgow, but I'm now live a few hours away from there, so I don't go there anymore. And I would sit in the pub and talk to atheists, and they wouldn't at first know that I was a Christian, and just talk about where they stand theologically. And then, when I informed them that I was in fact a Christian, typically they would be like, "Why are you here?" And I consider myself a skeptic as well. A skeptic isn't a body of doctrine. Skepticism doesn't relate to a body of doctrine. It's an approach to evaluating evidence. And so I'm a skeptic in the sense that I value evidence and argumentation to arrive at conclusions, and I don't base my viewpoints merely on blind faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 1 Peter 3:15, of course, the mantra essentially for apologetics. Interestingly, that the last part of 1 Peter 3:15 says with gentleness and respect. And I think that's one of those things that is oftentimes left out. Would you talk to that for a moment?
Yeah, sure. I always think it's important, especially when you're engaged in a debate, to show that you're not just there to win an argument. You're there to because you have compassion for people and you want to share this message. And I would always offer, if I debate someone, I would always offer to take them out for coffee or buy them lunch or something. I think that's important to demonstrate that you want to be friends with them, right? And they're not just a project. They're not just there for you to preach at and for you to argue with. And I think it's so important that we always respect them, and even when they say things which are outlandishly silly, or they're aggressive themselves, or they use ad hominem attacks and abusive rhetoric, I think that we should nonetheless always reciprocate that. We should refrain from paying them back in their own kind, but rather we should give them we should always display a spirit of gentleness, respect, and graciousness.
Yeah, trying to diffuse that attitude, that air of anger and almost misplaced. I said misplaced and misguided anger towards like you, I guess, or like the Christian in a way.
Right.
I guess my last question would be, I think there's a bit of a difference between this style of a conference where unfortunately the end of this particular article that talks about this particular I was going to say confrontation, but that's not really what took place, but kind of the separation of two different almost conventions. But there's a difference between that and the normal engagement that an individual would have for having a friend or a family member or a neighbor that happens to be atheist. And so what are the best ways to really engage. When you find out that a family member or a friend, or really anyone for that matter, is not Christian, that is in fact atheist. I mean, is there a specific path or something that specifically you use that tends to work better than other things? What are your thoughts?
Sure, and this is a very important issue, especially if you have a child who walks away from the faith and converts to atheism. And I've seen many situations where the parents will act in a very unwise fashion. There's many testimonies that you can watch within the neo-atheist community. I'm sure you can find a lot of these on YouTube, where people were mistreated by their families, they were shunned by their families, and they were almost disowned because they walked away from their faith. And I think it's important as Christians that we don't push them further away by displaying that sort of response, and that we should always approach these situations, whether it be a family member or a friend or a relative or what have you, with a spirit of graciousness and humility, and encourage them not to reject Christianity for any reason other than because they don't think it's supported by the evidence.
I would say that most of the time I see, when I encounter atheists like this, I don't think it's ever really an intellectual problem. There's so much more depth to the issue. So to reject them outright is maybe the wrong, right? I mean, that's just not
Sure.
the way to go, because
I would
it's more
say,
than just intellectual stuff.
I'd say that one question that you can ask them is, if the evidence supports Christianity, would you become a Christian? And if they hesitate for one moment, it's not an intellectual problem, it's a heart problem.
Yeah, I saw I actually watched a short little clip of a guy. I don't know who the guy was. He was an apologist, and this girl was asking him about about circular reasoning, and how isn't saying the Bible supports itself circular reasoning. And then he proceeded to ask her how do you, like, well, what do you trust how do you know that your reasoning is correct? And she said that, well, we're taught this way. So basically he got to the how her arguments are circular. But he asked her, he said, if I was to show you, if I was to absolutely prove to you right out that that the Bible is true and God is real and God exists and Jesus was Lord, would you believe? And she waited 30 seconds before answering. So he knew. I mean, this is the thing. This is a tactic that you can use. That's if you want to understand the situation better, right? That's the first question you should ask,
right,
before proceeding. And I think Frank Turek, guys like him, have said that's like a kind of the first step in engaging people who have come out as atheist.
Sure.
So I think that's a good tactic to use.
Yeah, and encourage them to read literature on both sides of the issue, not just on the side which they currently support.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that goes for, like we talked about earlier, if you want to understand a certain position, read from that certain position. Don't just read from the critiques. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.